Hello, all, and welcome to episode 533 of the Movie Bears podcast. I'm Bradley Harris, and I'm joining you with some of my favorite Husky Harry, Huggable Homos who love film. Try saying that 12 times fast. To review a little movie. It's not very popular right now. I don't know if a lot of people have seen it, but it's called Superman or something like that. I think it's a superhero thing. I don't know. Do we still
Another
see
one.
superhero movies? I don't know. Uh, I'm just kidding. We're really excited to talk about this one with you. I'm sure there are lots and lots of opinions in my own brain, and I know they exist in the brains of my co-hosts too. So let me go ahead and introduce them to you real quick, and then we'll let you know who our special guest star of this episode is. But Jim Pugliafico is with us here in our virtual studio, coming at us with a new computer and a new monitor and a whole new setup. How you doing, babe?
Yeah, I got a whole new setup. I'm doing great. Thanks, babe. I'm really excited for this episode because it's a special one for us. A special movie to all of us here on the podcast. And I'll just leave it at that because I think there's a bit of a surprise coming in a couple of minutes. But yeah, I'm really excited. I got some new tech. But you know what? Every podcast we do is a tech adventure anyway. So, this is just no different. So it looks like things are working. Finally, I'm ready to go. Let's get into it.
All right, excellent. Well, welcome. We're also joined by William Lindis, freshly back from his travel. Hey, Will, how are you?
Good. Exhausted. Just spent a week doing a bunch of work travel, rewarding work travel, fun work travel, but exhausting work travel. So I'm really glad to be back home, back with my dogs, back where I belong here in Austin, Texas, and back with all of you virtually, at least here, so we can talk about one of the most anticipated movies of the summer and to share our thoughts about it. So really excited about today's show.
Awesome. Well, so glad to have you back. It's good to be back in the saddle after taking a week off. And yeah, we've been alluding that we have a little bit of a special surprise. We have a special guest. We have a strange visitor from another podcast. This very handsome, delightful gentleman hails from the Comic Book Bears podcast. Bill Zanowitz, or Bill Z, as we like to call him,
Yeah,
is back with us on the show. Bill, how the hell are you?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. So glad to be back with you guys. I can't even think when the last time we did this was. May have been the Suicide Squad.
Oh.
It might be that far back. I'm not exactly sure. But there's something very full circle about this because the first time I joined you guys was for that big round table Man of Steel. So it feels really good to circle
Mm-hmm.
back with a film like with this particular film. It really feels good.
Brad, your audio is not coming
Brad,
through.
your audio.
Maybe you're muted. Spoke too soon on the tech issues.
Still can't hear you. Maybe we need to call the engineer to fix things.
Yeah.
While he's getting that going, all of the action figures were at my local GameStop. Still no Brad. And so I did not end up pulling the trigger on them. I had all of them in my hand, especially a character who ended up being my favorite character from the movie, which we'll talk about. But just really cool that you got all of those back there.
Yeah, not the full set yet, but
yeah, I know that. I don't want to spoil the surprise, but Brad ended up with 3 of one character. Somehow,
funny.
I think he bought one. No, we can't hear you, babe. Sorry. Keep working it. It's got to be the mic or something. Was working great.
Yeah.
Does someone put some green kryptonite down by your mic?
Yeah. I can always edit this out in the audio episode.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, I mean this is just for
yeah. Well, while he's doing this, I can provide some tidbits about Superman for me. Um, I don't know if this came out, but the Superman 78 was because you can see the gray hair here. I'm not 20. Um, the very first film I ever saw on its opening day.
Testing.
Yes.
Yes,
Gotcha.
there we go. There we go.
You hear me?
Yeah.
Oh my God. Okay. Wow. Crazy.
Bill
Whatever.
Bill was telling
But
us a story
let's finish
about
it. Yeah, Bill, go
78,
for
and I
it.
want to hear the rest.
Well, I
Yeah.
was just
Yeah,
saying that
please.
that Superman 78 was the very first film I saw on its opening day. So
Oh wow.
there is a
Really?
lot of affection when it comes to Superman as a film franchise on this end. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's great,
My
Bill.
dad picked me up at school at like 3:05, and we somehow made a 3:40 screening in the next town over.
Wait a minute.
Oh.
So let's complete this circle real quick. So first movie that you remember that you went to theatrically, 78 Superman.
Well, the first one I
No.
saw on its opening day.
On opening day. On opening
Got
day.
it. Okay.
Yeah. First one
Got
you
it.
saw on opening day, 78 Superman.
Mhm.
First movie you podcasted with us about, Man of Steel, Superman. Most recent movie you podcasted with us about was James Gunn's The Suicide Squad.
That's right. Yeah.
Yep.
Bringing us around to James
Okay.
Gunn's Superman here in 2025. I like this. I like this through line.
Okay, great.
Yeah, I do too. So Man
I'm
of Steel,
sure we'll
that was
discover some others. Yeah.
that was 2013, right? For Man of Steel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Years ago,
Now
Jesus Christ.
it's 2025. Was that really fucking 12 years
It
ago?
was 12 years ago since the round table.
Wow.
Wow. We've all gotten even more daddy-ish.
Poor Man of Steel, man. It's gotten kind of a bad rap over the years, and I think back on that, like I didn't dislike that movie as much. You know what I mean? I know that for Superman fans, and I know the reasons. Brad and I have talked about it a lot. That it didn't really hit the way maybe people expect a Superman movie to hit, and we'll see if this one does. It might. But Bill, back to your 78 movie experience. We were talking a little bit about this earlier. How we used to go to the movies. There were no reserved seats back then. Like you didn't buy. So like if you got there late, you could be in a really crappy front row on the edge.
I could have been going up Marlon Brando's nostril when they
exactly. So
that's crazy.
I remember the stress of going to the movies back then. You had to get there early for the big screenings, like this one probably was. And I think opening days were strictly Fridays. Like opening day screenings have kind of migrated backwards. Like they used to do, okay, a movie opens Friday, but we'll show it on Thursday at midnight. You know what I mean? And then it became Thursday all day, and now it's I think like Wednesday or whatever. It's just strange how things evolve.
It's crazy. Well, things have definitely evolved, as has Superman over the years, and of course as have the movies. And we got a bunch of people hanging out with us live. I know they really want to hear us talk about this film, so I'm going to go ahead and transition us into that movie discussion and get things up and rolling here. And I think, akin to how we normally do things, we're going to talk about this film spoiler-free for probably about 15-20 minutes. Since there's 4 of us, there's more initial thoughts to get through, and then we'll give you plenty of warning before we open things up to spoilers. So if you haven't seen James Gunn's Superman yet, not to worry. We will protect you like Superman himself from spoilers, and make sure we give you that heads up when that happens. But all of that said, here we go. Our discussion of James Gunn's Superman. All right. So we have a lot to talk about. And actually, before we jump into the movie, we have a comment from the live chat from Gil Complex on the road. Says, hey guys, I'm a slacker with so much catching up that I have to do. In fact, I'll be seeing Superman finally tomorrow morning, so I'll be avoiding spoilers tonight, but wanted to say hi. Welcome. So glad to have you with us.
Hey there, Tony.
And
I know him.
Yeah.
Yep.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Tony, good.
Thanks for bringing some friends, Bill.
Yeah.
Tony's great. Glad to have you here. And yes, as Brad mentioned in the upfront section, we're going to start with spoiler free, basically our
Yep.
discussion of the movie with nothing more spoilery than like what you may see in one of the trailers, right? Or something
Exactly.
adjacent to it. So, but either way, glad you're getting a chance to see it. And thank you for stopping in and saying hey.
Yeah, good to have you here, Tony, for sure.
Mhm.
For sure. All right. Well, Jim, thank you so much for volunteering to kick off this movie discussion for us. I think most people know what we're here for and what this movie is, but kick things off and let us know, spoiler free, as we mentioned, what your initial thoughts on the film are.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is a movie we've been looking forward to for a long time, since we've known it was announced that James Gunn was going to do kind of a Superman reboot. And God knows we've had many Superman reboots, and my husband Brad has gone through a lot of them. He's much more of a Superman fan than I am. Not that I'm not a fan. He's way more into the lore and the canon and everything. He's read everything, seen everything, pretty much Superman. So from the was Superman and Lois the latest series? Is that it? Or
Yes.
is that
Yep.
what it is? Superman
Yep.
and Lois to Smallville to the animated Superman series that he loves. And so we were both really excited to see this. And then worst of all, I couldn't see it with him on the first time that he saw it because I was sick and I couldn't go to the movie theater. So I didn't get to see it with him the first time that he saw it. But the next two times I was there, which was great. But yeah, so what I'll do is I'll read off the IMDb summary, which I gotta admit really sucks, and you guys might agree with me or not. I don't know, but then I'll give you kind of what I think is the real synopsis without really giving anything away. So here we go. Superman must reconcile his alien Kryptonian heritage with his human upbringing as reporter Clark Kent. As the embodiment of truth, justice, and the human way, he soon finds himself in a world that views these as old-fashioned. So, yeah, I think that's kind of a really sideways description. Maybe they didn't want it to avoid certain things, but basically, we've got Superman here. And again, I don't want to spoil anything about what the movie has and what it doesn't have. We'll get into that in spoilers. I'm just going to say that staying within the framework of like what's in the trailer and stuff, this basically is a movie about Superman struggling with his his alien heritage, right, from Krypton, and what he has grown up all his life understanding his purpose to be versus what comes about in this movie. And there's a real emotional struggle there at the core of the character, which I thought was great. I love to see that in this film. It's got a lot of superhero actiony stuff too, which we'll get into more of. There's some characters that show up here, one of which I think maybe two of which kind of steal the movie for me. A little bit away from Superman, played here by, I'm not going to call him a newcomer because he's been in stuff. It's just that he hasn't been in stuff at this level with this role. David Corenswet as Superman. And we'll talk about what we thought of him as Superman, as this new iteration of Superman a little bit. That'll be fun. I don't want to get too much into the other cast, maybe until we get into spoilers. But suffice it to say, I think the cast here did a really great job all around. I really enjoyed this movie. As you know, I'm not the biggest, I wasn't the biggest comic book kid, reading kid growing up. And it surprises me because I grew up kind of in the kind of toward the end, maybe, of the golden age of the comic book, kind of like some of you did. And I just never got much into comic books. And today I was thinking about why did that never happen? And it dawned on me that I was such a, I don't know, is it a nerd or a geek that kind of leans more toward the science than the fantasy science? The books that I read were those, I don't know if you remember them, but they were science how-to books. Do you remember those? They were like, there'd be one about like the solar system and one about the human body and, and they were like more hardcore. They were kind of on the verge of being like textbooks. But anyway, that's the thing that was my jam as a kid. Probably kept me away from the comic book stuff. But listen, I wanted to say this because it's funny, but I marvel at the depth of your DC and comic knowledge, you three guys that are with me here. So I don't know if I'll say a lot. I will have some things to say, but I'm going to kind of step half to the side a little bit and let you guys go at it. But yeah, I really, really, really like this movie a lot. Will it end up on the? It might end up on the year's best movies. It's certainly for me. It made some choices and did some things that I think puts it in the range of maybe one of the best Superman reboots of all time. So we'll talk about that.
You know,
All right.
if any one of us was to make sort of like a Marvel DC pun, Jim, you were sort of the dark horse in that race. Like I just don't have that image of you in my mind. It's giving me vertigo even thinking about it. So.
I actually had to
goodness.
look up some of that. So never mind. That was way beyond.
Hey,
Never mind.
listen, like a good reporter, you did your homework. You checked
I
your
did,
sources. That's a good thing.
Yeah.
And listen, just because we have the full spectrum of comic knowledge on this show, right? Like you, maybe with not much. Bill Z, I think you're probably at the other end as like the expert. I am probably between Jim and Will somewhere. Like, you know movies, you like movies. You're gonna have a lot of thoughts to
I mean,
share. I can't wait
when
to
I was
hear
a
'em,
kid
so.
growing up, and it come out like before my TV watching days, but like I was still in syndication. I watched the fuck out of the original Superman series.
We'll see.
You know, I loved watching that thing on TV, and you know, Bill, I'm sure you've seen that probably several times.
But one thing I have to say about this film is
Yeah.
that, and again, for the L here, there were many moments that if you have the background knowledge of as a comic book fan, there were so many Easter eggs and so many moments that you just did the happy clappy, whether internally or actually embarrassed yourself while you were watching it. But I think the movie is so finely constructed that you don't need an ounce of that to follow the narrative, to get a very potent and very strong narrative story across. And I think the smartest thing they did was not to have another origin story. We don't need it.
Yeah, for
we
sure.
just do not need it at this point.
Well,
and,
we'll definitely.
And how they covered that terrain in a very economical fashion, I was fascinated by.
Yeah, Bill, tell us.
We can talk about that.
Yeah, tell us a little bit more, Bill. Let's just jump into your thoughts. How did this one land for you?
I have to say, I went for the first time I saw it was with a very excited audience. It was with the Amazon Prime preview audience the Tuesday before the film came out.
Tuesday.
Yeah. Like you said, it keeps going back. Yeah. So it was a friendly crowd. Let's put it that way. And I cannot recall the last time I came out of a film smiling like I did. I cannot recall the last time I came out of a film. And this movie had a lot of ground it needed to cover from a business standpoint. You're starting off a new film franchise, effectively, not just Superman, but whatever this DC Studios universe is going to be. And I can't imagine as a creator what that pressure feels like, and for it to still not it doesn't feel, I think the worst thing about some superhero films and why people say that there's superhero fatigue is some of them clearly feel like they're made by committee. And this was a very unified, singular version under James Gunn. I also thought he kind of dialed back some of his Gunnisms for the betterment of the film. And I just, Jim, as you were saying, is this going to land in my top 10? I cannot see it not. Just as a film experience and as a film itself, it's so well constructed. A little chaotic in the third act, but again, that's the most nitpicky of nitpicks. It really really landed. It really did. And I tend to make bold statements, but um, I think the most important thing about this film is this is the film that we need at this time, with all the chaos and uncertainty that specifically our country is going through. And I think Gunn has made an intrinsically American superhero film. And that the international box office started a bit slow and has been picking up, that doesn't surprise me, because this film speaks to us and our experience with our surroundings. Um, and it does so beautifully. It shines a face, both the light and the dark on it. And I just thought it was expertly crafted. I really did. And when you said like the cast members, I cannot think of a film in recent memory where the cast chemistry was as fantastic as we saw here. I mean, that was across the board. That was across the board. It just,
Terrific. It was really
yeah.
terrific.
I mean, Gunn's good at casting. He's very good at casting. And that from my main background in entertainment is from working in the business end of Broadway theater and directing stuff on a non-commercial basis. And casting is half your battle. And
Mhm.
it was just it was just a succession of good choices. And there's so few films you can say that about. Really.
Oh, that's wonderful, Bill. So if you think about it, we've covered the two ends of the spectrum now, right? We have Jim at one end of the comic knowledge, Bill Z at the other end. Will, we're going to come to you here in just a second, but if both ends of that spectrum have really good things to say, I don't know. Maybe this movie is pleasing as many people as the numbers seem to be saying. I don't know. Let's see what Will thinks. Will, we've heard a lot of good things from Jim and Bill. Um, how did this one work for you?
So yeah, I think first of all, Bill mentioned that this film really had a lot of stream to swim up against, just in its initial setup. Not just where we are, sort of as a country, like socially and politically, although that's important too, but also where this film sits within its own zeitgeist, right? Because we just came off of the, what we call the Snyderverse, which was a very different look at Superman, and that particular story and the way it was received created a very polarized set of groups, diehard fans, diehard haters. And so coming into this film, the problem that James Gunn had, and I think you still see some of this with the vocal minority on social media, is there was going to be no pleasing both groups. So what I was worried would happen is a film that tried to be so much in the middle that it ended up being nothing, and that's not what we got. So what I ultimately very much enjoyed this film because I think that it really took a chance to carve its own path away from the Snyderverse into its own thing as an answer to the Snyderverse, but not exclusively as a counter to it. And I think that's the important thing that we got here. I had some minor issues with some of the script stuff. Like this storyline was messier than it needed to be, and I think that there's probably a world where, like, Bill, as you mentioned, the third act, and even just some of the plot threads kind of at the beginning of the second act, like there's just some stuff where, like, maybe one more pass on the script could have cleaned up a little bit. Ultimately, though, it doesn't matter, because what this film needed to do more than anything was capture tone and theme, and it nailed tone and theme. Anything else is, I think, sacrificed at the altar of those two things, which ultimately is the right decision. In other words, I think some of that script messiness probably ultimately was a good thing because it let the film do a couple of things it needed to do. It's setting up several franchises are launched out of this. We got to see a look at a character who's getting a movie next year. We got to see a group of other characters who all have some spin-off stuff that is in the works. None of this stuff happens in a franchise-free vacuum. And so we got a chance to do all of that, but we got a chance to see, for the most part, those characters as characters first. And most importantly, we got to see a fully realized Superman and our fully realized Clark Kent. And sometimes with these films, we don't necessarily get both. We sometimes get a good Superman and a weak Clark Kent, or vice versa. Here, we got both solid. So you got to really see the marrying of who this character is, how he is able to be both of those things, but also, project himself in a different way to the group he's around. Supporting cast all nails it. I'm especially a big fan of, I think Lois was probably the character that was, with Rachel Brosnahan playing her. I think the character that most nailed it in the entire film, and that's high praise for a film where I think a lot of people nailed it. She's so damn good here. She gives as good as she can get. She is she really gets to be the person whose superpower is journalism, and she gets to use that superpower pretty regularly. There's other characters in here that I really want to talk about, but we'll talk about them a little bit more. Of course, David Corenswet is a very good Superman, as I mentioned. Last thing I really remember him in was he was the projectionist in Pearl. That's, I think, the first thing I really remember seeing him in. You hear a title like the projectionist and you think it's like a bit part. He has a significant role in that film, just with no name. I liked it. I liked it a lot. Will this be in my top 10 at the end of the year? It's in that category right now where it will more than likely be. That said, we still have a lot of year left, and I am not looking forward to a rest of the year where this film doesn't have competition. I want this film to have to fight tooth and claw through December 31st for my own rankings, because that means it's going to be a damn good rest of the year. But as it is, I think everyone should go see this movie. Superman's such a part of our culture right now that it doesn't matter if you've read every comic book there is, or if you're only aware of him through, his, 97 different shows and cartoons and movies or whatever it happens to be. Superman is for everyone. You don't have to have that deep encyclopedic knowledge to enjoy this character. And so I'm glad that, Jim and Bill on different ends of that spectrum in terms of knowledge of this character from a, written, the flipped page perspective, were able to both find a lot of things they enjoyed. Damn good movie. Definitely recommend it.
Awesome, Will. Thanks so much for weighing in, and glad to hear your thoughts. Yeah, I think that speaks well to what I've been seeing online as well. Like, there's so many people who I think were really burned by the Zack Snyder version of the character, and I was one of those people. I was so looking forward to Man of Steel, and I knew it was going to be a little bit of a darker take on the character, but I don't think I really expected just how dark and dismal and just heavy that was. And so I bet if we go back and listen to that episode again with Bill Z on the podcast, you'd hear me grousing a lot and trying to put a positive spin on it to, I don't know, salvage something. But there's a reason I haven't gone back and watched it again. Many reasons, actually. On the flip side, though, I've seen this movie 3 times in theaters, as Jim alluded, and it was a bummer, babe, not to see it with you the first time. But I'm so glad we got to see it another couple times together. We've been just going out with friends to see it again, and this last time we saw it, we actually saw it in D box or 4X or whatever you call it. Different theater chains have different names, but it's the seats that move like you're in a ride. They shake and they rock and they tilt. And our first D-Box movie was F1 a few weeks ago, our second showing. And I think, Jim, you and I kind of agree, like, D-box showings probably shouldn't be your first, because they kind of distract you and pull you out
Yeah,
with all the
yeah.
movement and stuff. But for a third time seeing Superman, it was like seeing the movie in a whole new way. Like when Superman is like flying and veering or punching, and like seat is shaking and tilting. I felt like I was in the movie, like flying around with Superman in like a Mr. Terrific chair or something. It was really cool. It was a great way to be brought in. But the movie itself, as someone who, and I know Jim makes fun of me all the time for saying I grew up on a farm in Michigan, but like as someone who is a Michigan farm boy at heart, this movie gave me everything. It reminded me that, Bill, like you mentioned, the world that we live in today, that kindness and like old-fashioned like ways of looking at how we should treat each other, like, are not old-fashioned and bad. Like they're what we need to reach back for and remember. And with a good heart and good intentions and a willingness to hear each other and meet each other where we're at, we can accomplish so fucking much. And this movie was just such a herald of that for me. David Corenswet, I didn't remember seeing him in anything ever before, and then I looked it up, and he was in Twisters, which we saw, was that last summer? I don't know. And I was like, oh, right. He was wearing glasses. That's why I didn't recognize him. And then I'm like, wait, shit, no, he was wearing glasses in this movie. That doesn't explain it. I don't know. I think I just really appreciate the fact that this Superman is not a super well known, like super well established actor. It was a bit more of a blank canvas to project the character on, and listening to some interviews that David has given, he grew up with Tom Welling on Smallville as kind of like his Superman, and I see a lot of those influences on the character in this movie. But also it's like he and James Gunn picked like the best parts of all the different Supermen. Like I see the Christopher Reeve, I see, some Tim Daly animated Superman. Like it's all coming in, and I think of him as like the unifying Superman at this point. Like he takes a lot of the best parts of them all and weaves them into something new. So Jim asked me where I rank David Corenswet as Superman and like the line of them now. And I think he's just below Christopher Reeve for me now, which I didn't think I would ever be able to say about someone like in a newer Superman film or project. But did a pretty damn incredible job. Before I give things up and we go into spoilers, I did just want to do something meaningful for me. We have a friend in California who knows what a huge, huge fan I am of the character. And he went to a really cool fan event for the film. And he got this awesome print that he sent to me.
Oh,
And
nice.
Jesse Delgado, thank you so much. I just redid my whole office with Jim's help. New desk, moved everything around, and I'm trying to pick the perfect place to put it on the wall. But I had that same image as my phone background. And so when I opened the box and saw this special thing, because I didn't know it was coming, I was like, oh my God, this is such incredible kismet. So, Jesse, I don't know if you're watching, as we're live streaming, or if you're going to catch it later, but just thank you from the bottom of my heart for such a special gift. Really appreciate you.
Making your office
So.
look like the Fortress of Solitude was not easy. You know what I mean?
I
It wasn't.
know.
It wasn't super easy, and it was a substantial undertaking, but got it done.
At least all the ice crystals are like organically and ethically harvested, right? Like that's the important part, and it was painstaking, but we made it work. Anyway, well, listen, across the board, it sounds like we really love this film. We've got a ton of folks who are hanging out with us online. Folks, don't forget, let us know what you thought of the film in the live chat. We'd love to read some of your comments as we get into spoilers. I know a couple of folks here, though, haven't seen it yet. Scott Stace, good friend of ours. He's in the Pacific on a boat right now, bouncing his signal off different satellites just to listen in. But he hasn't seen the movie yet. So, Scott, as much as we love you, it's probably time to step away because we're about to get into spoiler territory for this film. Real quick, though, just to give folks a little bit more time as they scramble for the pause button if they're listening on digital tape delay, or exiting live. Kev is here with us as well, and says, "Oh look, it's the Hot Bears podcast." And Will, I don't know how much you want to get into it or whatnot, but he also had to say that William Landis is the real Superman. Will's even wearing the shirt. Look at that.
Oh, of course I am. And yeah, look, I'm not the only person who out there who's fighting cancer right now. So I consider myself not the Superman, but I do consider myself part of that Justice League.
Love that. Absolutely.
The Justice Gang.
We're the Justice Gang.
There you go. Well, Scott says bye-bye, kids. Mick Jones. Oh, my God, Mick. Great to see you. Hope you and Akbar are doing well. He says, enjoy seeing it this weekend. Hope you all love it. But hopefully we've given folks enough time to do what they need to do. Spoilers for James Gunn's Superman are officially fair fucking game. Where do you guys want to dive in? Let's do
Mr.
it.
Terrific. I would like to start there. I didn't mention, I know he's in the trailers, but most people who've watched the trailers don't necessarily know who that character is. So I didn't want to flag that. But in addition to Rachel Brosnahan's Lois Lane being my favorite, I think that kind of right up there with me, right up there with them is Mr. Terrific. Actor is, and of course I did not pull it up.
It's Edie
Gathegi. Yes, who played Darwin in X-Men First Class.
Yeah, the first name's pronounced Eddie.
Eddie.
Yep.
Sorry about that.
And I only know that because I've watched like every moment of promotional footage from their tour.
With interviews and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. So Mr. Terrific, I've always been like when I sort of like think about the DC Comics stuff and what I really enjoy, there's a lot of different places to land, and I always find myself coming back to some of the Justice Society related stuff. And Mr. Terrific and the iterations of him have appeared throughout that book. So he's one of like my favorite like DC characters to see on page. So I was really, really excited to see him in this. And he also got, we're in spoilers, so we can talk about this. I think he got the coolest, like, you know, like there's the most heartwarming scene or the funniest scene or whatever. He got the most badass scene of the movie, I would say.
Yeah.
Slow motion, set to music.
The James Gunn.
The T-spheres.
Signature slow motion, arrow finds its way to all the villains thing. Yeah.
That's the one. Yeah. So we get that slow motion moment set to a good needle drop as he gets to just sort of be a badass and show us like, why is this guy who doesn't have any powers able to like kick it with Superman? It's like, oh, because he can do all of that. There's a lot of cool moments in this movie, but that was just like the one that had me sort of like at the edge of my seat, just like fist pumping, ready to go.
I mentioned there were two characters that pretty much almost stole the movie, and Mr. Terrific was one, and of course Crypto is the other one.
Yes.
I just love the way that, I know Crypto is a totally CGI creation, but God, I just think they used that character very well. Certainly us animal lovers, love to see that. See that part. There was one moment where Brad knows I kind of got a little pissed off at Lois Lane. In one scene. I think I forget the exact dialogue, and maybe I'm reading it wrong, but
I can tell you what it is.
It just came across as a little weird. It's like I think it was during an interview, right? Where she's interviewing him. No, it wasn't?
No, it's the second time that they're in the apartment.
Second time.
Yeah.
And he says, I gotta, where is he's trying to find Crypto because Crypto's been taken. And he's trying to find Crypto, and he's a little bit anxious, and he said, I gotta find Crypto, and she says, it's a dog. And I'm like, ugh, I wish they didn't use that line in there, because like, I don't know, us animal lovers feel sometimes that like dogs are important, animals are important, pets are important. Like, to diminish it that way just felt a little weird to me from her character. But
it's a complicated, layered thing, right? Because like the fate of the world at this point is like,
I
war is
get it.
breaking out, and all this crazy stuff is happening. And yes, we love dogs, and yes, we love cats, but like, even for me, I'm a cat lover. Is one cat like worth, millions of people dying? Like,
Maybe not, but you
it's a
don't
hard
make
thing,
don't make that value judgment from
She
your
may,
character that you
look,
want to like.
she may not be a pet person. Like, look, is there a dog or a cat hanging around Lois and Clark's apartment?
Not
No.
very so.
No,
No.
because Crypto is only there because he's being dog sat for a few days. So she just, it's, career oriented, kind of focused on kind of getting the scoop, and never probably this just never had time to really like raise a dog, raise a cat. And so to Brad's point, then just like, if you don't have that sort of in your background as part of it, you might say, well, what's a dog against the fate of the world? I say all of this as an absolute Crypto lover, of course, like,
oh,
I'm
yeah,
a dog
of course.
person. And I am a comic book and movie fan who works in the veterinary industry. Crypto is like crap.
He's like the top superhero.
Yeah. And let's not forget, Crypto has superpowers too, right?
Yeah.
He's not a normal dog.
He's the one. He's the one dog you're not angry that he did not get any obedience training. You know what I mean? He's the one dog. We're okay with no obedience training for that.
I also love, though, in the comics, Crypto is like the paragon of good boy, and we get something else. We get total chaos.
Yeah,
he's a chaos gremlin, and I love it.
He's a complicated character,
and it's the story is so much better for that. In that there is this chaos agent that how can you? He's got to be there.
Well,
it
sets the tone. If that's the way Crypto acts, and again, we're deep in spoilers now. Supergirl is his owner. That kind of tracks, She's the type of, she seems like, just from the way he responds and the 20 seconds of her we got to see on screen, I get the vibe that she is a loving, affectionate pet owner who will immediately like give belly rubs and too many treats.
Spoiled.
But the idea of sort of like the proper training isn't like necessarily part of it. She's like, you know what? That's just Crypto. That's just how he is.
Yeah.
I learned a lot about her character from Crypto, and so that's really cool world building too.
Yeah. Plus, it gives Crypto an arc in these things, right? Like, I don't know what role Crypto is going to play in the upcoming Millie Alcock Supergirl movie, but maybe Crypto learns a few things along the way, and 3 or 4 movies down the line, Bill, maybe he is that paragon of good boy, right? But he's still young. He's a puppy. He's learning, and that's going to happen. I just want to know, if Supergirl has Crypto, does that mean Superman gets Streaky the Super Cat, since originally that was Supergirl?
Oh yeah. That maybe.
I don't know.
Maybe.
It's some very funny memes online that if it was Streaky instead of Crypto, then it would just be Superman's bones out
with Streaky sitting there licking its butthole on the side.
That's exactly right.
With like one leg up. In a corner,
Streaky home. Streaky
home, and he just goes home and leaves him there.
Yeah, we talked a little bit. Bill, I think, brought up how this movie had a lot of ground to cover, and a lot of. I saw it as having to walk a lot of lines, and one of those lines is trying to present Superman in a more modern setting, kind of in a world and a country situation that we're in right now, and a lot of that came through in the film very well. I think there were some scenes that were strikingly prescient about current day America. I think the scene where he was being arrested as an alien, right, and being quote unquote brought to justice, at the hands of what was it called in the movie, the guard,
Planet Watch.
The Planet Watch. Which, come on, I mean, that's a direct parallel to some of the shit we've got going on now. Masked, armed thugs. I was astounded at that scene, and I'm surprised I haven't read much about the movie after, but I wonder if there's other people, mentioning either pro or con, kind of that that portrayal of militaristic authoritarianism in the U.S. right now.
But yeah, it brings in a lot of that. I think a lot of folks are thinking there's a lot of parallels to like Israel and Palestine as well, and
In the overall,
mhm,
Yep.
yeah. So it brings in the social commentary, but without like hitting you so hard over the head with it that you're
Right.
like, ugh,
Right.
what a slog. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
Right.
I appreciated the balance that it struck there.
Mhm. And in terms of some of the negative, like outside of reviews, the negative perceptions of the Superman went woke, like you don't know a damn thing about the character.
Ugh.
When those
Right.
people
Oh,
chime in this case, I do think if some of those people see it, I just hope that there's a few of them that realize, oh, hang on, I'm on the side of the bad guys. I really hope that is. And Brad, something you said beautifully, and this wasn't anything I was thinking about before we got into this. Uh, when you mentioned, kindness as a superpower, that's a superpower we all potentially have, and that feels wonderful.
Bill,
And
I
I hope,
appreciate your optimism. I really do,
I
and I
really
share
do.
it. I
Yeah,
share it. But we've been shown time and time again. Well, I don't want to make a
yeah,
political thing out of this, but we've been
yeah,
shown time and time again that our faith in humanity is, taken a lot of hits over the
yeah.
last, year or whatever. But
Right, and there will always
yeah,
be villains. There will
Yeah.
always
yeah,
be villains.
Right.
yep, yeah,
But that it does address that in any capacity right now.
Mhm.
Um, it's just heartwarming. It really is.
yeah.
Well,
Well,
and it's really cool. Oh, sorry, Will, go ahead.
I was just gonna say it's able to do that with also without being too uh Mary Sunshine Optimist about it
At all,
too.
Mhm.
Like
exactly.
Yeah.
I think that sometimes a film like this could or should or whatever lean into this idea of like, well, if we can just empathize, if we can just treat, if we could show, then I mean, no, like there is a moment that we are supposed to rally behind where Hawk Girl throws a fucking authoritarian dictator to his death. And so this movie is able to sort of do both things
Mhm.
in a good way.
Mhm.
Let us know that like there is optimism, there is hope, there is a way, but also sometimes you have to take action. And
Mhm.
I think it's cool seeing that and sort of seeing where the characters land in that spectrum.
Yeah, I mean, one of the big criticisms of the Superman character, and I think one of the reasons we haven't gotten a lot of great movies, is there's this prevailing opinion from a lot of folks that he's too perfect, he's too good, he's too noble. Nobody can be like that, so it's unrealistic. And I'm like, you're talking about a guy who shoots laser out of his eyes and flies around, like, and we're gonna focus on that. But okay, but Bill, absolutely to your point, they even call it out in the movie. Superman gives this like great speech to Lex Luthor, and he's like, I wake up every day,
Fantastic.
I
Yeah.
screw up all the time, but I try to make the best choices I
Mhm.
can, and I realize, my real power is like being kind and done. And he's like, and I hope you realize you have that power too. So
Mhm.
Bill, to your point about like reaching for that kindness as a superpower, yeah, absolutely, still lots of villains out there. But villains, talking to you, it's not too late for you to reach for that kindness. It's not
And
for
and
you.
he says that
Yeah.
to the engineer and to Ultraman as well.
Yep. Yep. He
And
does.
I think that's a very that's something that distinguishes him from some other characters, I think,
Yes.
Agreed. Yeah.
over time. And one thing I have to say is, as we were talking before we got started, this is my third time. I've seen the movie 3 times, which, believe me, post pandemic is unheard of for me. Unheard of. Um, and that scene, I initially dismissed that bit of dialogue as bordering on corny the first time I saw this film.
Mhm.
Having seen it a third time, I think that's one of the exchanges that this film's going to be remembered for.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
that shows the importance of repeated viewings, but it also, uh, just in terms of the creator and Gunn understanding the character.
Yeah.
And there's been plenty, however things have fallen with previous Superman films, there are plenty of examples of the principal creators not understanding core values of the character. And eh, that's so refreshing to see. Oh my God.
Yeah,
It
and one of
really
those
is.
core values is just the idea of like, when written correctly, Superman is the character that can see the potential for good in everyone,
Mhm.
but without being naive. And I think that's the challenge. He's not cynical, he's not jaded, but he understands that his part of his power is to stop these people, but also part of his his obligation is to try to find ways of redirecting that. One thing I thought was really cool about this
Uh-oh. Is Will
Uh-oh.
breaking up for anybody else?
Will, you got choppy?
Yeah, Will's frozen.
Uh-oh. Let's give it a sec, see if it resolves.
Was he talking about Antarctica?
Perhaps.
Look at that.
Perhaps. All right. Well, hopefully Will be back in a second here. Jim, I know this is going to be a whole lot of fun for you to edit. Thank you in advance. The joys of podcasting live, right? These things happen.
These things, they do happen.
Until Will comes back, Bill, I just wanted to add on. Lois even calls out, I think, what you're saying in that interview scene, right? She's like, you went in, you tried to stop a war, you thought you knew better, and he's like, well, or she's like, what gives you the right to do that? And he's like, well, I was doing it like for goodness and to prevent people from dying. And he was like, kindness and care for each other. Maybe that's the real punk rock. Maybe that is the real, like, edgy way to look at things. And that just absolutely blew my socks off, because I can't remember another movie or TV show or anything I've seen recently, right, where it's like that is the motivation. Like,
and I do have to
really
say,
special.
I thought that interview scene was just so well crafted.
Yeah.
And you're watching two people, and neither of them are wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
everybody's had conversations like that at some point in their lives. Well,
Yeah.
but that
Yep.
where there are everything she says is accurate. There's the questions that should have been asked before you took these steps. And they're, as I said, like, you come away with the sense of, hey, they're both right, and their justification for their being right is sound. And like we said, with the repeated viewings, it was the third time that I really got how good Rachel was in this film.
She was amazing.
Just how
She
good.
was, 100% the glue that held this together. And that interview scene was kind of going to one of the things that I enjoy so much about the way Superman was characterized is he had some flaws. And again, these aren't like earth-shattering. Like, we've seen the Brightburns, we've seen the Homelanders of the world, and I think those are acceptable takes on telling a Superman story. But with this particular Superman, the flaws are much more minor, and one of them happens right at the beginning of that interview. When she first nails him down to sort of like start having that interview, he kind of grabs his coffee cup and just kind of sits down, and there's a bit of a, I don't want to say smug because that's not Superman, and I don't want to say condescending because that's not Superman either, but we live in a society where misogyny is built into every single part of society, and all of us, even if we are not directly misogynists, live in that society, operate under that framework, and have to fight those biases every day. So when she sat down to interview him, there was a brief moment of, okay, yeah, I'll humor her. That kind of flashed across his face. And immediately he was like, oh shit, I forgot how good she is at this, and was put back on the back. I like that. He didn't go straight into, he went into this the way an air quotes normal person might, with some of that, like that minor flaw and having to sort of readjust around it. Minor point, but something that I absolutely loved seeing.
And in a way, I think it speaks to one of the beautiful things about their relationship and his arc as a character. Like, he talks about, oh, I went in and stopped the war because I'm good and I know better. And she's like, yeah, you're good and you can help, but like, are you helping in the right way? Are you thinking about the right aspects of this? And it's almost like when they can check each other, right? When Superman can act with more, yes, maybe moral authority, but like also understanding how the world and politics and these things work, right? Like, maybe that's kind of his arc too, is figuring out how to work, with that system instead of just taking total control over it. She's his check.
Yeah. But Bill, I know you mentioned that what I consider to be like the emotional climax of the movie was his speech to Lex Luthor, and you said it wasn't until the second or third time where it fully landed
It was
for
the
you.
third time
It kind
when
of
it fully landed for me.
like it came across a little maybe smarmy and corny, I guess, the first time.
Well,
And
I don't know
and
if
that's a,
smarmy.
that,
I think maybe it was like a little too aw shucks. And
gotcha.
I think some of that was more from my perceptions of the character.
Gotcha.
My
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and
Um,
that's totally fair.
yeah.
It knocked me out the first time, and I think it was the choice by the filmmakers to put that speech at the exact moment of not only to give that emotional moment right at the plot climax of the film too,
Mhm.
right when
Yep.
he's there to take down Lex Luthor, and he's gonna he's taking him down, and he takes that moment to try to um, I don't know, give some kind of message to Lex Luthor and maybe reach out to him a little bit. That just shows like a supreme level of empathy, right? To me, as here I am. I've got the upper hand. I could do whatever I want, but like I want to just explain myself to you a little bit, right? And
Mhm.
I thought that was a really great filmmaking choice in terms of getting the most impact out of that scene, and that was impressive to me.
Mhm.
And it's Superman, so like I think a little bit of aw shucks is okay, right? Like, it's built into his DNA. He is someone that can be vulnerable and sincere in a way that doesn't come across as false in a way that like a
Right.
lot of other characters. Like,
Or
if
naive. Right.
yeah, like, can
Yeah.
you
There's
imagine
an authenticity to it.
any world where any version of Batman ever would say that line and it not come across like as just the most off thing possible, you know?
And
Yeah, it's interesting for me, and I don't know, maybe it's corny, but like, when I moved to the big city, when I graduated high school and I moved away for college, it was such a culture shock for me because I was very much like salt to the earth, aw shucks, like ma, pa, being extra kind. And like, people were mean and rude to me about it. And they're like, you're so fake and you're so not real and nobody acts the way you do. And I think I kind of let the world teach me for a long time not to be that anymore.
Mhm.
And I feel like this movie just blew the lid off of giving me permission to dive back into that all
Yeah.
over again.
Yeah.
And I love that. That has stuck with me
Hmm.
in the 2 weeks or whatever it's been since
Yeah.
we've seen 11 days. That's
Yeah.
huge.
And in the 1980s in the comic book, there was a series, and if you go to here's a pitch. Comic book bears our episode on Superman. We talk about it. There
Pitch it.
was a mini series that basically rebooted the character, and some of the stuff stuck and some of the stuff didn't. But one thing that stuck from that point on, which I think was integral to the character, was the moment that Kal-El lands on Earth, he becomes Clark Kent. That's who the person really is.
Right.
Um, Kal-El is something fairly foreign to him. Whereas with Batman, he was Bruce Wayne until his parents were murdered, and from the moment their parents were murdered, he's Batman, though he's not named that yet. You know, that's who the person really is. And I think of all of the media that this captured that spirit the best, that we've had in the 40 years since.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought they really got that part of the character right. And you know, with things that you were saying, Brad, about you know, that you felt you had to suppress this down. Um, you know, that when that is your background, that must be really tough when that's who
Yeah.
you are, you know. And you know, especially as gay men here, you know, we've all been pressured at points in our life
Yeah.
to suppress something about us. And with a person like Clark, who is that's constant because he can't, you know, he can't fly out the window at every moment. Um, you know, I think he's a poster child for that particular dynamic of doing it right. You know, like,
Yeah.
you know, the world has provided some circumstances for you that there is some necessary suppression, and how you deal with that defines who you are. And that's really deep. I didn't mean to do that.
No.
That's
Oh, it's
okay. That's
great. It's
okay.
wonderful.
But
Yeah.
saying like, hey, the real
That's
person there is
you know
Clark
that
and not Kal-El.
that's the
You know?
That's
beauty
what we do
of a
here.
film like this
Yeah.
that is well executed, well written, and well presented. Right, it makes us go to those places. That's the power of film and good film, and that's a testament, I think, to this movie. But I had a question for you guys that's been kind of on my mind since I saw it the second time. Is in this film, there's a thing about the messaging that Kal-El gets from his parents in the
Yeah.
Fortress of Solitude, and how it's like he supposedly only saw part of the message, and he built his whole life and his whole understanding of his mission here on Earth around a partial message. And then lo and behold, the villains uncover the rest of the message, supposedly, that kind of goes against that initial messaging a little bit. What did you guys think of that? Is that really a change to the canon, or do you think that was built into this movie as kind of echoing how the media today twists messaging in its to get to get the public swayed under their ideology? Does that make
Well,
sense? Did
I,
I,
I
did
it
I?
think,
does, but I think
yeah,
the answer can be. I'll go quick, and then Bill, I think you'll have more details here. But like, I think the quick answer is it can be both, right? You know, this is a spot where it allowed them to do something a little bit different with the traditional origin story, and then also use that to show the lens through which anything, it doesn't even have to be a falsehood, it can even be truth, is used and exploited and put forth in a way that
Sure.
is, you know, manipulative messaging, you know? So I think that's as big a part of it. And then when we look at what that messaging is, it's meant to also create a fear mongering and an other, which is what we see right now when we're sending our
course.
own Planet Watch out to track down our own illegal aliens. I'm doing air quotes on these for people that are just listening to podcasts. So yeah, that's I think the answer is both. But Bill, I know you have a little bit more to add there.
yeah. I mean, I think the depiction for you know, for 40 years of Krypton has been of a caste-based, sterile society, and I think that what was put forward in that message certainly aligns with that depiction. Um, but I also hold out hope, um, in that there's a kind of important book called the Bible, and for 2,000 years people have been debating about what the actual, you know, what the actual
Mhm.
translations and what the actual intent of certain passages are. Um, and there's a part of me that hopes harem is actually friends. You know, there's a part of me of
Hair
enemies
'em.
and their treatment,
Yeah.
to vanquish them is not exactly what the translation. There's a part of me that holds out that kind of hope, especially because Jor-El and Lara traditionally have been um, have been portrayed as
Hmm.
characters that go against the grain
Right.
Right.
of their
Yeah.
society. So that I feel there's more there. I feel that,
Yeah.
that there's more there, and it may even tie into Supergirl's film because
Yeah.
we have to have her story, and however
Hmm.
her story lands, it's not as happy as Cal's is when it comes to her upbringing. And
Right.
Yeah.
there's definitely a
Hmm.
reason why she uses the language that she does
Yeah.
in the scene that she's in the one brief
Yeah.
scene that she's in.
I
So
hope
I
I
have a
hope so.
feeling this is something that's going to be
Yeah.
revisited later.
Well, I mentioned earlier about David Corenswet, like growing up with Tom Welling and Smallville as like his Superman. Jim, to your question, I don't want to get super spoilery into Smallville, but one of the parallels I saw with Smallville in this movie, something similar happens in Smallville. When Christopher Reeve shows up as like this, famous smart dude who decrypts the language and intercepted a message, um, Clark gets this message and he ends up getting it in his ship that says they're a flawed race, rule them with strength. And it freaks
Mm,
Clark the fuck out because he
mhm.
got the nice sweet message from Christopher Reeve, and then when he translates it from the ship, it seems like he's there to like rule and conquer. But then you find out later on translations aren't perfect. That isn't really what it meant. Like
Yeah.
strength and rule in this case really meant like guide and protect and
Mhm.
uplift, right? So yeah, maybe, according to Mr. Terrific, and he's the expert here, maybe it is a legitimate message, and maybe the translations as they understand Kryptonese are correct, but there's nuance in meaning. The fucking English language has 4 different meanings for the fucking word dwell. So like, I'm not surprised. Maybe we could get it
Right.
wrong, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So,
And even if it's right, I think this really hit home the importance of the Kents.
yes.
It
Yeah.
really hit home his
Mm.
upbringing. And when we're saying that, everybody's coming away with this film with different parts that they grafted upon. And I have a friend who's an adoptive father, and he lost it in the last scene.
Oh.
He
Mm,
absolutely
yeah.
lost it. And I understand, look what you're
Mm.
seeing there. But I
Mhm.
think, like Jim, as you said, this might be right. This might be an exact translation. And if it is, it shows, that the importance of nurture over nature, in the most hackneyed
Right, and
way,
I can
um,
Mhm.
totally see
is
the
that
level
important.
of
Yeah.
soul searching that this
Yeah.
character is subjected to now, right?
Mhm.
I mean, he grew up, based on his learnings from, being brought up from the Kents and that initial message
Mhm.
in one box, basically. This is how I'm supposed to be. This is my mission. And then finding out something else makes him totally re-examine that and like, am I really that person? Can I be? Should I be? Like there's a lot there. There's a lot
Well,
Yeah.
there to
a-
explore.
and maybe
Yeah.
even more importantly, there is another part of the analysis here that's like what that message and intention is doesn't matter. And the reason I say that is because who Clark is and what his values are were formed from the moment he landed. So,
Mhm.
regardless of what his biological parents intended or didn't intend, his adoptive parents, who, as he calls them by the end of the film, his mom and dad, the biological parents,
Yeah.
um, the way that they shaped him and help guide him is who he's become. So I think that's also an important thing, where
Yeah.
to that it is nurture is such a crucial part of this. I do also there is that part of me though that does hope that it is a mistranslation. I walked out of it thinking sort of like I would love to see it be sort of like there's a Twilight Zone episode, To Serve Man, where
Mhm.
like they just keep like kind of finding an evolution of kind of what the aliens want. Oh, they're going to serve man, they're going to give humanitarian aid. Oh no, it's a fucking cookbook. How to eat humans.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what this is here. Again, that
Yeah.
translation's off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One character we really haven't talked about, which is a principal character is Lex Luthor.
I was
And
just about to
I was
ask
just
y'all
wondering
what
what
you
people thought
thought.
of
Yeah.
Nicholas Holt there.
Mm-hmm.
I think Nicholas Holt did a fantastic job. I think Lex Luthor was a very dominant, effective version of Lex Luthor. Of the principal characters, not the actor, the characters, he was the one that I felt was maybe the least like fully developed, in that like this version of Lex Luthor we got was so focused
Thin?
and dedicated specifically on the eradication of Superman that we didn't get to see a lot else to him. I don't know if that's necessarily an overall flaw. We know what Lex Luthor's thing is, and we already have I don't know if I need, living here in the middle of 2025, a let's find some empathy for the billionaire stories. So I'm okay with them just kind of going straight into it.
Yeah.
But again, it was the area that I think that it was maybe as a character one of the weaker characters. And I say that like this is a great movie and I like
Yeah.
this Lex Luthor too.
Yeah. So
Uh-huh.
one thing I told one of my co-hosts when he brought up about certain characters aren't as finely developed as the others, what's the name of the film? You know, I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
there are supporting characters. I still haven't seen my Lex Luthor in my head, though I adore Gene Hackman's portrayal. Um, but if it is this hyper jealousy, I've always felt age should be in the mix there. You know, that Superman's probably like 20 years younger than Lex
Mm.
is, and he's just like the fucking dude's younger too. You know, that.
Yeah, another reason to be
It's like for
envious,
some
right?
reason in my head
Mm-hmm.
that's always kind of been in there. But I thought he did a fine job. I thought the film did a fine job of showing how billionaires literally get away with murder.
Yeah.
And that's doesn't have to. It doesn't
Mm-hmm.
necessarily have to hit you with a flying mallet to make the point.
Well, and I think one thing this movie does well with Lex, and Jim, I think you might have some thoughts on the opposite side, and would love to hear those too, is it does a lot of showing who Lex is through what he's doing versus just telling you who
Yes.
Lex is. He's torturing a dog. He's keeping girlfriends who write bad blog posts about him in secret prisons and pocket universes. He's riling countries up against each other for his own benefit. Like, yeah, there's no exposition machine character that's like, well, Lex Luthor is a bad guy because he was abused as a child and da 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 da. It's like they're showing us, right, who he is. And he does have that speech at the end about envy, right? And if you think of like his pure motive, he comes right out and he says it. No, duh, I'm envious of you, and then goes on to expound on that. So there wasn't as much legwork I think they needed to do with Lex. Maybe there was
Right.
a little bit more they could have done, but I mean, he's more fleshed out than some versions of Lex we've seen. So I appreciated
Probably.
it.
Right.
Yeah.
And I also thought it was really interesting how they showed no matter what technological weapons he might have at his disposal, it's public opinion, which is the biggest weapon.
Mm-hmm.
Is
Yeah.
the biggest element to weaponize.
Where'd you land, Jim?
On Lex?
Yeah.
I had similar thoughts coming out, that I thought his character wasn't quite as developed as I would have liked. And again, nothing against the way Nicholas Holt acted the character, because I thought it was great. It just, in a movie that focuses on, yes, Bill, the name of the movie is Superman, and we get a lot of in-depth character work on him and a few, maybe a couple other characters, but really not much on Lex. And then I started asking myself, do I really need it? Do I really need that to enjoy the movie, or does this movie have what I would normally call like a villain problem? You know what I mean? Just a billionaire out there doing billionaire shit, bad billionaire shit because he can, or and at the end he said he's envious, right? Of I think there was one line that said, oh, it's about him being envious of the metahumans and Superman in particular. I just wanted just a tiny bit more. I could have done with a tiny bit more. Maybe it was there and they took it out of the movie. I don't know. But again, I still love the movie. It certainly didn't ruin the movie for me.
Yeah.
You know, I do have one. This has been a very positive fest. I'm going to bring it down lightly with one thing I actively did not like in this.
Well,
but
I
it was
brought up
very,
the animal
very small.
hater in Lois.
You brought up the animal hater. I really did not like Beck Bennett, Steve Lombard. I like Beck Bennett a lot.
Nerd fight in 3,
Yeah.
2, 1, go.
I like Beck Bennett. Steve Lombard is supposed to be sort of like a douchey jock, and so I think he like nailed all of that. The parts when we get to see him, the earlier stuff in the movie where he is like bullpen comic relief, I think is fine. But he kind of continues to be comic relief when like the shit hits the fan there. And it felt like whenever it kind of cut to him to do something, I was just like, okay, I get it. You're going to say something kind of like goofy. Like the comic relief, I don't think was needed where they used him during the third act. I wish they had toned that back at that part.
Okay, I think that's valid, but I also thought he had one of the best in character moments of when the message was being broadcast on the screen, and without any words, just the way that he did it, taking the pin off.
Yes,
I thought that was really, really well done.
That was very good. Yes, yeah.
Also, the bit where he's like, "Put my cat on the phone." She will know. Cats can recognize voices.
My pet peeve. All right, we've had CGI in films since what I guess, like good CGI since the first Jurassic Park. I'd say probably maybe The Abyss. I don't know.
Yeah.
Why can't they get CGI alien babies right?
Yeah.
You know, they always look fucked up. Like Baby Joey, you deserve better. You know that? You know,
oh, Baby Joey.
Joey deserved better.
Yeah, it was almost a little like Flash CGI for me with the baby, and that was some weirdness for sure.
That was also something so weird about this film was like I wasn't even paying attention to most of the special effects,
right?
Because it felt and I think some of this was the way that Gunn presented this world. You know, this is a world that nobody bats an eye that there's such a thing as a pocket universe. Nobody bats an eye again with the description in the film that metahuman activity has been at least public for 300 years in this particular universe. There's a friggin' dimensional imp in the sky, and people really aren't batting an eye about it. It's part of their day-to-day lives.
Right. I mean,
but that happened with me too. I mean, like, especially with some of the fight scenes and how how fine the CGI was in that. I just forgot I'm not watching something that really happened at some point.
Yeah.
At some point I was totally in that world. And that's except for fucking weird baby
alien baby. Speaking of the special effects and the CGI, what did you all think? I mean, we haven't talked much about Nathan Fillion as Guy Gardner, but what did you think of like the hard light special effects for like his constructs rather than being like super glowy bright like in the other?
I thought especially in the scene in I'm never gonna get this right, Jandapur or whatever. I thought those were chef's kiss.
Oh yes, absolutely.
I thought those were chef's kiss.
The middle fingers coming out of the ground.
The fingers. Yeah, it looked good. In fact, the only time I really it's interesting. The only time I noticed any sort of like choppiness to the CGI, yes, the baby, and very early on, there's a scene, one of the scenes where Crypto is flying and he kind of goes against the sky. It's like there's like like sometimes we're just like they don't shadow something or they don't light something just right. Like the actual model can look good, but it can look like, oh, it looks like it's superimposed there just because it doesn't. There was a moment earlier on there where I'm like, that's a tad janky. And then the story caught me enough that I don't know if the rest of the CGI had any of that same jankiness, because if it did, I didn't care. To Bill's point, so the only time I noticed it was right before it got its hooks in me, and as soon as it did, it's like, let's just go.
Yeah.
Again, except for the baby. The baby.
I think for me, I might have noticed some of that stuff, but in the back of my mind is there's some gate that opens that says, hey, you're watching a fantasy science fiction, superhero movie. Everything's not going to be realistic or look realistic, and whatnot. But I got to ask, what the fuck is the imp in the sky? That whole thing went over my head that was happening in the background. People around me were laughing, and I'm like, what are you laughing at? It's just, it looks like some, like, I don't know, like a drone display in the sky that's getting.
Well, for me, like, Bill, to your point, this is such an everyday thing now, right? Like, there's a big kaiju fight, and a guy who works in a bodega is just like drinking coffee, like watching the kaiju fight happen instead of running for his
It's
life.
not the first one he's seen. Yeah.
Right. So, like, this is day-to-day life in Metropolis, and Superman flies into the apartment, and Lois gives him some hot cocoa, and he sits down and he sips the cocoa. He's like, oh, that's good. But, like, the battle's happening in the background, and it's like, why isn't Superman out there saving the day? And then he says, they've got it. They got it handled. This is the thing they do, whatever.
Yeah.
But it's like they're having this serious conversation that's playing out while this crazy battle is happening, and a giant fucking baseball bat knocks it, like a big baseball. And it's like holding two things at once emotionally. It was really cool.
It was basically comic relief, right? Because I had no sense that thing was a threat to anything. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't.
So what that did is it did two things. It presented us like the idea that this is a world that this isn't like the beginning of a reboot world where we have to see the world.
No boy in the cornfield anymore.
Or that this isn't the first time the city's been attacked. This isn't the first time. So we don't have to go through those story beats. Two, it's telling us that there are other heroes who have stepped up to the plate in enough of a way that it's not just like Superman and some random upstarts. I mean, this is a world where these superheroes, the Justice Gang, they're all on the payroll of a guy who has got them in uniforms and is sort of doing stuff, and the world is good with that. So superheroes are enough a part of the everyday fabric of this world that not only do they exist and they've been normalized, but they've also been corporatized. And I think that's what all of that is doing, again, without like us having to get like scrolling text at the beginning of the movie.
Yeah.
And also from a comic book perspective, there are imps that play in the legacies of these characters. Two that immediately come to mind are Mr. Mxyzptlk and Batmite. So there may have been some people chuckling because of that.
One of those Easter eggs maybe you were talking about earlier on. Yeah.
Jim,
that makes sense.
The first name that Bill said, I dare you to try to spell it.
I barely heard it.
Mr. Mxyzptlk.
I heard Batmite. What was the other one?
Mr. Mxyzptlk.
Oh my God, no.
Yeah.
Mr. Mxyzptlk.
So listen, we are circling in for a landing. I want to respect everyone's time, especially Bill joining us from a later time zone. But I want to ask one more question before we maybe wrap up here. Bill, you were talking about things that were like taken out of the movie potentially, or almost taken out. I was reading an interview with James Gunn today where he almost took the scene of Superman saving the squirrel out because test audiences hated it. And he decided to take a gamble and leave it in. Where do you all land? Was that a cringeworthy moment? Was that a good moment?
I think, he respects all sentient life, and a lot of his conversations about how they took down the kaiju relate to that. So it's completely in character. And I was A-okay with that. Absolutely A-okay with that.
I guess I mean it happened in like a couple of seconds, so I mean it didn't do much.
It wasn't like he saved the squirrel and then a panel from a building.
I know he respects and I know he respects and is a champion for all sentient life, but I think I would have preferred him coming back to Lois when she made her dog comment instead.
So you also have to think about like things like this happen not just within the confines of our world in which we watch this movie, but also the worlds that these stories exist within, right? And so the Superman of this world has the time to stop and help the squirrel and it be a positive thing. If this were the world of, say, Invincible, that decision would have cost like 20 people their lives, right? But this isn't
Sure.
that world, and
You're
so
right.
and nor should it have to be. So I like that we got to see again. If this movie was like Superman spending every damn fight saving every animal that existed, like it would be like, okay, come on, we get it. But this was just one little moment of like, you know, empathy that we got to see for the character, so I liked it.
Well, we have another weigh in here from the live chat. Richard from Palm Springs says he loved that moment as well. And Richard, I'm right there with you. Bill, Will, I'm there with you too. That Superman had the time, right, and the wherewithal and intention and save the squirrel, I think, is just such a perfect encapsulation of that character. And I don't know, there's probably some like, you know, memory from when he was growing up where he had an interaction with a squirrel and he was like, oh, squirrels are great, they deserve to
Nothing
live
in
too, you shouldn't hunt
Smallville.
them.
You can remember
You know.
nothing there.
You know what?
Didn't have
You know
a
what
pet
happens?
Maybe he had a pet squirrel. Yeah.
You never know. You never know.
You know what happens in the next scene though is Streaky just absolutely just wrecks that squirrel.
Well, we had I wondered because we had Crypto chasing the squirrels when he was being tortured by Lex. So I was like waiting for a follow-up scene where Crypto's
Squirrels
going
or
after a
monkeys?
squirrel and Superman's like, huh?
He was
It
chasing.
was squirrels in the Pocket Universe.
In the Pocket
Oh,
Universe
yeah.
prison, they were squirrels with capes.
But then he
But
wasn't
I-
chasing the monkeys.
Yeah, but I was expecting like a follow-up moment where Crypto goes after the squirrel and like Superman's like, Crypto, drop it. But Crypto ended up just beating the crap out of Lex instead, and I was very okay with that.
That was awesome.
Yeah, good to see Crypto, you know, get some comeuppance in. But I got to say, there's so much more we could talk about with this movie. I think we could easily go for another hour. First on my list, though, Bill, I haven't gotten to listen to y'all's episode on this yet. I've queued it up. I'm ready for it. I'm going to play some Death Stranding later and maybe put it on while I'm delivering packages in post-apocalyptic America.
We actually shout you guys out because it's very spoilerific, and we mentioned on the show that we really admire you guys for actually being able to stick to this format that you have of the non-spoiler section, and they're going. We also mentioned Karina Longworth of You Must Remember This, who's really good at that. So kudos to you guys because I'm sure I'd blow it if I had to do that week
Thanks,
in and
Bill.
week out.
Wow.
Yeah.
We appreciate that.
Yeah, and so if you do listen to us, I can just start the plugging here. Comic Book Bears
Please.
podcast has been going. We've been active since 2012, and when we do have episodes, and just like you guys with our hook is hairy heavy homos to talk about comic books, but you don't have to be a hairy heavy homo to listen in. What we do for our movie-based episodes is we talk about the film, but then we also break and talk about collected editions or graphic novels involving the characters from the film that we think people may enjoy, and kind of tailor that more to people who aren't really regular comic book readers. So one of those gets talked about. Yeah.
That was actually going to be my question for you,
Yeah.
Bill, to see if I mean, you don't necessarily have to go into the same detail. Leave our audience wanting a little bit more, so they'll come listen to your episode. But at the same time, if you could give, maybe if our listeners were like, walked away from this going, I loved this version of Superman, and then they wanted to go down to their local comic book shop, where should they start?
Okay, for me, and though it's the 80s and it's exposition heavy, I would start with the reboot that I mentioned earlier in the show, which was the Man of Steel, which was written and drawn by John Byrne, who's prior to this was known for legendary runs on the X-Men and Fantastic Four. And this was the original trade paperback of it, because I'm old as sand. And this was the one that rebooted the character and stripped it away, because where he was at this point, prior to this point, he was almost an omnipotent character, and this certainly he gets his ass handed to him a few times in this film, and basically a lot of the starting points that were there in the film are followed up. A lot of the starting points in this are followed up on the film, as I mentioned before. The importance of the Kents, um, that he really is Clark Kent at heart. The issue of a clone, which we really haven't gotten into here. Lex
That was in
Luthor
the
not
film,
as Lex Luthor not being portrayed as a mad scientist, but as a tech billionaire. Some of the more chaotic elements of Lois Lane, they basically start here. And I think if you started here and then went on to some other works, like two of the excellent books that Bradley showed there, All-Star Superman and Superman for All Seasons, I think this is a good jumping in point, because it's deliciously comic booky still. And like I said, there's it's the 80s, and they don't really have uh, the modern sensibility down yet that we've been accustomed to since at least 2000. But it's almost there. So this is where it would start. The Man of Steel by John Byrne.
Awesome. This is like the best Reading Rainbow episode ever. I'm just saying. Well, Bill, do us a favor if you don't mind, because like Will said, we have listeners that I know are going to want to check out y'all's show and hear more about this. Where can folks find the Comic Book Bears podcast, and how can they interact with y'all if they want to get in touch?
Sure. Well, probably our best point of contact is our Facebook page. For most social media, we're Comic Book Bears. On Facebook, we're Comic Book Bears Podcast. You can write to us directly at comicbookbears@gmail.com. We do live stream our episodes. We've been doing that since the pandemic, so you can find us on YouTube and subscribe there. All those go out live on Facebook as well. On YouTube, we also have an audio version of the show, the audio only version, which is like where we get like some really nice views racking up. It's so nice to see that. You can download us from Apple Podcasts and catch us from Spotify and Google Play, all like the regular podcatching platforms.
Rock on. Well, listeners, we'll definitely, and I say we, Jim, if you don't mind including links to the Comic Book Bears podcast, that would be great. Just to help you
of course.
Find them. Bill, y'all have an amazing show.
Thank
you for 10 plus years of friendship and superhero podcast cross team ups, and I know we tend to have you on when there's like comic book related stuff, but
you did also have me on for Mamma Mia. Here we go again.
Did. So. And I was just gonna say, don't feel like it has to just be the comic movies.
Honestly,
we love having
where
you on.
else but the Movie Bears podcast can I compare Mamma Mia, Here We Go Again to The Godfather Part 2? Where else can I do that?
Amazing.
And that people get it.
And it's perfect. Yes. Yeah. It's like I'm awesome. Amongst my people here.
Yeah. Right.
And
for sure.
I listen to you guys all the time. There certainly have been films, that I, some of Will's mumblecore suggestions where if you look at it from a particular lens, that I had that lens from some of his descriptions. I also love when you guys don't agree on a film, because I always am excited about where I end up coming down. So, and it seems to be more with Jim than anybody else if I tally them up. So
I want to know all of this.
Yeah. But I also love one of my favorite episodes, which was across the board. You guys didn't like the film, was I, Frankenstein. I just love.
It's amazing how many. It's amazing how many films we've done. Like that have been pretty bad films that we've like almost forgotten about till somebody like Bill brings them up.
Yeah.
And with our podcast, we tend to be, because there's so many with the comic book podcast, there's so many like angry old white men podcasts out there that we tend to there's plenty of stuff we read that we don't enjoy. Sometimes it comes in there. I'm kind of famous for a graphic novel called Lois Lane and the Friendship Challenge. I wasn't kind to it, but we tend to celebrate stuff more than knock it down.
Sure.
Bill, but sometimes we have the disagreements, and that's where it comes in. You know,
Maybe the celebrating stuff is the real punk
punk
rock.
rock. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, there's so much we
Yes.
didn't talk about. We didn't talk about
I
Ultraman. We
know,
didn't talk
right?
about the music. We didn't talk about how toyetic this movie was.
Oh my gosh.
We didn't really
Unapologetically
Yeah.
go
toyetic.
into the
There's so
Oh,
many
bold
things.
choice to use the engineer from the Authority
yeah,
as the
Right.
person.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a
Right.
lot.
yeah,
We could
I,
be here for 2 more
I
hours.
yeah,
I
and
feel like we could have a volume 1, volume 2, volume
yeah,
3.
Yeah,
Like, you know.
a
and
s- a Superman review for all seasons.
yeah.
I love it.
And if
I
I
love
could
it.
just say one more thing about the film, which I didn't say on my show because I this came from the third viewing of you have to love a film where the main character is bloodied and beaten at the beginning of the film and smiling at the end. You just
Yes.
you have to.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh,
That's pretty awesome.
yeah.
For sure. And for anyone curious, yes, I did buy the soundtrack, so that underscores my opinion that it was a
Yeah.
good movie.
And
I had
maybe
someone ask me.
in the spirit of the radical empathy of this film, maybe I was a little too harsh on Beck Bennett. You know, darn it, I can be such a jerk sometimes.
Ah, nice. All right.
Yeah.
Well, let's wrap this thing up. Jim, if people want to get in touch with you between now and our Fantastic Four episode next week, relative to when we're recording, how can folks find and reach out to you?
You can find me and my movie ratings and sometimes reviews on Letterboxd at JJP Out West. That's my handle on Letterboxd, and I love that app. I love going in there and putting in my 2 cents, but also reading everybody else's 2 cents. And usually I try not to read any reviews of movies till at least after I've seen them, and even sometimes till after we've got a chance to review them, right? Because I don't want it influencing my what I give for an opinion. I wouldn't like that. So yeah, but I do love going back and reading letterbox reviews, even for old movies. Anyway, and then you can find me on Facebook under my name, Jim Pugliafico, right here.
All right, awesome. We are in no way sponsored by Letterboxd, but Letterboxd, if you did want to sponsor us, call us.
I know,
Maybe
right?
work something out. Uh, all right. Will, how about you? Where can folks find and interact with you?
Hey, Letterboxd, one of the podcast episodes members here, has been a member since the beta, so bring it on. Yeah, we'll start there. My Letterboxd is at the Movie Bear. I've tracked, 13, 14 years now of films on this thing, which feels insane. That percentage of my life has gone into this app, but it has. So I'm at the Movie Bear there. I'm also on Facebook. Look for William Lindis there. You can find me on some of the other social apps as well, but these are the two that I use the most. The only one you won't find me on is X, because I nuked that place. That's it. That's the plugs.
All right. Well, Will, thank you so much for letting folks know where they can find and connect. You can find me on Facebook. Just look for Bradley Harris. I am also on Letterboxd at iBradPro. I think I signed up during the beta, but then I didn't use it for like 10 years or something, Will, until you were like, Brad, why are you spending 40 hours trying to figure out your top 10 list? Letterboxd could do it in 5 seconds if you used it, which is absolutely true. It's amazing. But I rate everything that I see there as well. I'm always surprised when someone like requests to follow me and like comments on my little reviews. I'm like, people really care? Oh, okay, this is cool. All right. But also just wanted to say, thank you to everyone for tuning into the show this week. This was a really great discussion. You can find, of course, this episode as well as all of our past episodes online. We've been doing video podcasts for 10 plus years at this point. We've got our audio show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, etc. Guys, we're coming up on 550 episodes, I think, by the end of the year, which just blows my mind away. But yeah, this was episode 533. So I think if we do the math, we can do that by 2026, right? Maybe?
Yeah.
Possibly.
You know?
Yeah.
Very likely.
can I just get one more plug in? I meant to do this
Yeah,
for my
please.
co-host. I'm very sorry about this. Our next episode is this upcoming Thursday night, and it's actually going to be a preview episode for a new podcast that my co-host Steve Mulry is going to be
Ooh.
shepherding. And given that it's the 50th anniversary and his is a horror-based podcast, we're going to be talking about Jaws. So
Yes.
if you like talking about
Wow.
film, we're going to be deviating from our normal shtick, and we'll be talking about the legendary 1975 film Jaws.
Hell
Can't
yeah.
wait for
Already
that.
ready for it.
Jim put on that awesome like Jaws at 50 doc.
It was very good. I
Oh, it
love
was
seeing
really good.
other filmmakers and actors
Yeah.
and what they thought about that, because most
Mhm.
of the other, there have been like two types of Jaws documentaries. The one that just is strictly about the making of the film, and the other's about the treatment of sharks in response to what the film
Mhm.
did. And it was nice that we got something a little different from that.
Yeah.
Y'all
for
should
sure.
come down here to Texas, where it's specifically the Austin area, where we've had for probably about 10 years now, minus a COVID year or two. Jaws on the Water, where
Oh,
Draft House
yeah.
and kind of the rolling picture show, they set up the giant screen and you go off and you watch Jaws at night on a little inflatable tube.
That sounds like so much
Love it.
fun.
I would love it.
Oh man. Well, Jim, I know we were talking about watching Jaws again, so we're gonna have to watch it before Thursday so that we can listen in.
I just
And
want to make sure we get that upscaled version. You know what I mean? Because they did a lot of work.
yes,
They did a lot of
right.
work to restore it, and I would love to see it that way.
Absolutely, that would be
Yeah.
fantastic.
And
All
the
right.
screenings take place in late August from Fathom. Is that
Okay.
right?
Oh,
I
I
okay.
think so, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, looking forward to listening to that, and thanks so much for spotlighting that, Bill, putting that on our radar. It's gonna be
Just
super
because it
fun
was
too.
for my co-host, I was
Yeah.
really
Well, I mean,
for not
we
doing it. So.
love the whole CBBP family, so I'm glad we could.
This might be the start of a network. We'll see.
That would be amazing. I would love that. All
Yeah.
right. Well, thanks so much for tuning in, y'all. We will be back next week for Fantastic Four. Hopefully, we will see you then. Thanks for tuning in. In the meantime, enjoy movies, and we'll see you later. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.